thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Good evening, teachers, educators, school leaders from around the world. Good morning, good afternoon, and a warm welcome to another conversation about AI in the classroom. Today, we're going to talk about AI in the classroom hype, hesitation, and what's really happening. So artificial intelligence is dominating headlines, and big tech is making bold claims about its potential to revolutionize education. I'm sure you have all heard the saying that it will transform the way that teachers teach and students learn. But some are worrying about the risks, the ethics, and also the pace of the change. In schools, as we know, reality is often much more complex than what we hear from big tech. Some teachers are excited about AI and experimenting and integrating it into their teaching. Others are hesitant, maybe unsure about how to begin, and others are concerned about the impact of AI or maybe simply struggling to find the time to learn. So in this episode of Teachers Talk Radio, we're going to try to move beyond the hype and the fear to explore what's actually happening in the classrooms. What are the real obstacles that teachers face when it comes to AI? How are students responding to AI? What are early adopters discovering on their learning journey? And what advice do they have for teachers who are maybe more cautious? And so joining this afternoon, is two educators with different perspectives of AI in education. I'm very pleased to give a warm welcome to Mariel Reid, who's a teacher in MYP Individuals and Societies, the International Baccalaureate curriculum at the International School of Bologna in Italy. And she is leading a Gemini AI pilot as part of a Google reference school. We're going to hear much more about that this evening, but she has embraced AI in her teaching and she's exploring its potential. Warm welcome to Mariel. Mariel, in just a moment, I'll let you introduce yourself. And also a warm welcome to Christina Peters. Christina is a language teacher at the Berlin Cosmopolitan School in Germany. And she has not been an early adopter. She's experimented a little bit, but like many teachers, she has concerns about how AI is developing. She has trouble finding the time to really learn how to use AI, and she's not sure about how to best prepare for it. So together tonight, we're going to discuss the realities of AI in education, the challenges that we face, the opportunities, and what teachers can do, and whether they are eager to explore AI or still uncertain about its role in the classroom. So a warm welcome to everyone. And Mariel, I'll let you introduce yourself first. A warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk about this incredibly relevant topic. As you said, my name's Mariel. I'm an MYP Individuals and Societies teacher. At our school, there was a pilot program that started thanks to our IT director, Pio Fabriziani, in collaboration with our school management, Google, and Acer. So we've been running this pilot for about a year. We're the only school in the world to have completed the pilot with the Acer Chromebooks that we have. So it's been a very interesting journey, lots of learning, lots of challenges. And I think it's really important to discuss all of the aspects and recognize that there are ethical issues and challenges that need to be discussed when embarking on the AI journey at school.
Absolutely. There's lots for all of us to learn. Christina, warm welcome to you. I'll give you a moment to introduce yourself to our listeners around the world.
Thank you to inviting me and having me in your program. Currently, my current school is in Berlin Cosmopolitan School, and there are some small steps to introduce AI to the teacher, to the team, from the leadership with the PD days, for example. Otherwise, they're only individual small projects from some teachers. And before, I was teaching in Sweden for 30 years without any AI experience the last couple of years. So so I'm a completely newcomer, but curious.
That's I think sometimes that's all that's needed is an openness and curiosity, and that's the beginning of every good journey. So I have lots of questions for both of you tonight, but before we get into the questions, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Our show tonight is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational. They are publishers of professional development books and resources that support teaching and learning in schools around the world. I also want to thank our other sponsors. Your students could study in the United States. USA Study is your one-stop platform for guiding students through their college application journey. So don't hesitate to go and visit usastudy.co.uk. And finally, teachers, make sure to join the Teachers Talk Radio team in Manchester on Saturday, the 1st of August, for a Teachers Talk Connect. It's one of our biggest free events ever, and you are warmly welcomed there. So thank you, sponsors. So I will start with my first question, because I am very curious to hear what you think about this. I hear a lot of talk from big tech. And I also know, having a background in teaching, that the classroom reality is sometimes different from what we're hearing on the stages. And so artificial intelligence is everywhere in the news. Companies are making big promises about how it will transform education. So Christina, I'll start with you. In your experiences, are you hearing that these promises align what's actually happening in schools in your experience?
I think in reality, I see from my perspective, very little about the AI, but the talking is there, that we should, and that's important, to jump on a train or being prepared. But it's already rolling, so how can you be prepared? So sometimes I feel it's already too late. So in my daily work, I really don't feel that we use it, but the students use it. And then I can hear from the teachers, from the colleagues, that they use it for their preparation, for example, for their own sake, but not together with the students. And then there are some PD days when you have workshops, when the leadership thinks, oh, we need to prepare the teachers or give them some education in, because they have to use it. So for me, it is a little bit spontaneous, or not that much as we hear in news or in the media.
Mariel, I saw you nodding when Christina said, how do you prepare for a train that's already left the station? What went through your mind when you were hearing her say that?
I think Christina's experience is in many ways the majority experience. I think this is what many educators are experiencing, hearing a lot about it and maybe not necessarily having the tools to get involved. And I know, even if I'm very much involved in AI and education, even in just the last year that I've been involved, so much changes so fast. It's really developing very quickly. So I think even as someone who is very involved in it, it feels fast. So I think that's something that I can relate to, despite maybe having a different level of experience with it. It really is changing and developing so fast. And I agree with Christina. I think there is a lot of talk. A lot of it is coming from big tech. I think our school experience, because big tech was also involved. We had partners, Google, Acer, who gave us the tools, who provided the licenses, who gave us some of the training, who gave us the opportunity to really develop that. I think that's an example of good practice, but I recognize that it's a rarity. It's not happening on a majority level at the moment. So it can be really challenging for educators to understand what the potential is, to understand how it could be implemented. How do I facilitate this with my students if I'm not sure about what the next step is? And so I think Christina's experience is very valid. I think it represents, what most teachers are experiencing.
And Christina, you mentioned as well, you're seeing that the students are using it. And so that must bring an additional layer of pressure to kind of get ready for using or understanding what it is that's happening in the classroom.
Yeah, but I think that they mostly use it at home. But if they are allowed to use their computers or other devices, so they would use it even in the classroom. But for me, as I see it, they use it as a fast solution or a quick fix, not to use it in a way which I think they could, where they also have their own thinking, a process, which I think they want the shortcut, not doing the work. And there's so much more potential, even if I don't know about it. So I just imagine what they could do with it, and we together. So I think that they use it mostly for writing texts, for example, doing some research, and let the AI do the job for them, but not with them. And I think that is a wish I would have to, I try that to make them understanding that they have to do the work, and the tool is just there for doing more and learning more, not doing instead for themselves. So there's also a danger I see. So I think, or they prepare a presentation. So those kind of things they use it for, and they don't talk about it. They maybe don't say it, or they say it. I don't need to do it. I can ask AI, and that's a negative way to look at it. I think that's not how I want to use it, of course.
Yeah, I think it's a concern that I think you probably share with a lot of teachers around the world. Is we want our students to learn, and we don't want the AI to just simply do the work. We want, if they are using an AI, they need to use it in a way that they are still learning, which is I think a great challenge here in the beginning of having these models. Mariel, I know that you were an early adopter. Were these concerns some of the things that led you to sort of adopt AI in your teaching, and when you did, what were your first experiences like in the classroom?
Yes, I mean, I remember when one of my colleagues, I have a few colleagues that are really into tech, the colleagues that you go out with on a Friday and then you own cryptocurrency by the end of the evening. So one of them messaged me and said, oh, this new tool has come out. You've really got to try it. It's OpenAI, the ChatGPT function. And I remember engaging with it and thinking, what do I need this for? I don't understand what I would use this for. But then I started hearing a lot of chatter about it from my students. So I started asking them, well, what are you using it for? How are you interacting with this tool? And I started to get my first maybe assessments and homework that I thought, this isn't the student that I know. So engaging with them, that was really what pushed me, I think, to learn more as well, because I thought it's here. They're using it, and I want to be able to facilitate their learning, as I have always tried to do. So I want to learn how to use it ethically. I want them to understand its potential as a tool, and I want them to be prepared when I'm not in the room. So that really ended up being an inspiration. Coming from the same concern, the concern about learning is very legitimate. I think one of the challenges that I'm facing now, we do a lot of teaching around AI and how to use it, is that, as Christina was saying, using it at home, not at school, there are data protection issues. So, certain companies were not transparent about their data use and have had issues with it. We don't use any of the AI tools outside of our Google ecosystem for the simple reason that our data is not protected. So we can't have the kids using school accounts for certain chatbots. It can really be a risk to your school data system. So there's challenges that are technical, but there are also sort of more basic challenges that they have age limits on chatbots. So, how can I teach my students to use Google Gemini when they're not 14? They're all using it, right? They're using ChatGPT or other chatbots, but technically they shouldn't really be. I mean, just like any other social media that they have where they've lied about their age, but objectively there are ethical issues there that need to be addressed and discussed and brought up and brought to the forefront. We can't just say it's here and we're all using it. That's not how it works.
Yeah, I think that's such an astute observation, because I think, if we are teaching students AI literacy, we really shouldn't be teaching them until they turn 13, 14, because those are some of the age restrictions in the system. Yet we know that they are much younger when they use it. And somehow schools have to find a way to balance those different needs and different realities. Christina, I'm going to go to you with a question. Before I do, maybe you want to comment on this as well. JBL, one of our listeners, is saying a common thing now for students is to fact check teachers as they are speaking. You're a language teacher, and I wonder if you are seeing a change in the way that the students are interacting with you when it comes to language teaching. Are they fact checking you more?
Not really fact checking, but they maybe come up with another word, or when they say, this is a word, and I say, no, it's not. You use it in a different situation. So what's good for my side is it's my mother tongue. So I can explain it, but I could imagine for others it's much more difficult when they check that and get fast a solution. But another problem is, I think, they maybe don't choose a language anymore because they say it's not needed. We have AI for it. We can use it too. I don't need to learn a language in school. When they before maybe would have chosen another language, a second, a third, a fourth language, I don't know. So now they maybe don't see really the need for learning a language, and especially not in the classical way we did for so long time. So they can just, I can just have my phone and I can talk to a person without learning the language. And then I have to give them examples or a situation when they say, but you are a human, this is a machine. There are things in between, like the nuances in the language or the emotions or other parts, as you cannot replace it with a machine, but it can help you. So to explain that, it's more challenging, I think. But I'm also a history teacher, so this comment on checking the facts, I'm just thinking, oh gosh, no. How would that be for me when they check me on the facts there? So for other subjects, it's, I think, really, really challenging for a teacher, for the educator.
Because
be alert and then just react on that, yeah.
Yeah, and we all know that that students love to point out if we make mistakes in the classroom. So that's the best part of the day. Christina, just to expand a little bit your thinking on that. I know that you're a language teacher, history teacher, and your background is not technical. You haven't had any AI training. So for you, when the tool suddenly became available and appeared in the classroom, what was your initial reaction? What were your first thoughts when you first saw this appear in the schools?
I think two things. The first is a more negative reaction when I say, okay, one day we're not needed anymore. They can learn it all from home. They will not talk to us. They were not thinking that we have to go to school, so we can do it from home. That was one side. So all the experience, all the things we would like to make them learning or discussing with them or just teaching, educate them. So that would gone with the AI. But I know that's not that's not the way it is. But that was my first reaction. The second one is what an opportunity. Or what could we do with that? We could just add on, and I don't need to check them all. So I cannot do that at the same time. But if we could use it together and they could learn pronunciation, or they could have an interview with someone at the same time, and they get a feedback, which they wouldn't get from me. That would be a revolution. They could learn so much more, much faster, if they are motivated to that and if I know how. So there are two sides, actually.
I think that's an amazing answer, because I think for me, that sort of signifies a wonderful teacher, is that you can tell that there's this inner passion for lifelong learning and that you're seeing an opportunity. But then there's the hang up, how do I do it? Like, I see that it could happen, but how do I get there? So Mariel, I wonder if you maybe could pick that up just a little bit, because I know that you have had an opportunity to jump in. You have used AI in your classroom. And I'm wondering if you could share with us some examples of how teachers could get started. What did you do? What worked well for you? And are there any challenges that you've encountered that you could give your peers some advice on?
Absolutely. I think my AI journey started with interacting with a chatbot. So very much as a time saver tool. I teach over 100 students, so things like writing report comments. I don't want to write the same comment for every student, but maybe I want to say something similar. I can rewrite that with a chatbot, and it saves a lot of time. Even lesson planning ideas, different activities. So that was really sort of my first interaction. It would take me a very long time to talk about all the things that I do with it now, but I'm happy to say that we are at a place where I'm able to facilitate students using it to enhance their learning. So the rule that I always give them is that it needs to facilitate their learning, not bypass it. And anything that they would ask me that I would answer, they can also ask AI. So they use it now, for example, with an essay, to write their own outline, to come up with their own keyword list. Because as Christina was saying, in the past, I would maybe make a general word list for whatever topic I was covering. But if I'm doing inquiry-based or project-based learning and students are working on a more individual topic, it's really challenging to find the time to provide a word list for everyone, to help everyone with their outline. So I've helped them learn how to do that on their own. And they're really excited about those kinds of opportunities. And I think really open to the idea that it can facilitate their learning rather than bypass it. I think they do still want to learn and are still curious about it, but they need the help and the guidance to understand how to use the tool. We recently I had them practicing for an assessment. So we were doing a source analysis task and, looked at advice from the chatbot. How do I do this? What could be some practice questions on this topic? What kind of essay question might I get that I can practice writing some outlines for? So it was an in-class assessment. They couldn't use their devices for it. but they could practice and prepare for it. So I think there is absolutely a lot of opportunity there, both from the teacher side of saving time, which we are always lacking when we are trying to do our best to meet all the needs in a classroom, and also room to help them really understand it as a tool. And I think actually I was talking to a student today and he said, so much easier for me to access information with my chatbot because I don't really know how to do a search that is effective. So it also made me realize that there are some skills that they're missing. You know, for me, in many ways, it could be much easier to do an internet search and less impact on the environment sometimes, but they might not have the skills. So it also made me reflect on, you know, what do I need to be teaching? Is there a gap here that I need to look at as well? So I think my advice is more than anything to create a space where you can have an open conversation about it. I think that's been the biggest change for us with our students, is they started out trying to hide the fact that they were using AI because it was at that time pretty much a violation of our academic integrity policy, you know, but we've moved the conversation to be open and honest, and how can we use this tool and what is a good choice, and sort of learning together about their needs and how I can help.
I think that's a very insightful comment, and I think it brings to mind something that you mentioned very early on is what do we lose when we use this, and also what are the ethics of using it, making conscious choices about what we do and what we omit. So doing a Google search used to be actually quite a skill to put in a good search, and now maybe that is something that will be lost. Christina, there was a case in the news, I don't know if you heard about it, of a group of students who had created a chatbot of Anne Frank, the young lady that was hidden away during World War II as a Jewish girl. She was being persecuted, and the students created a chatbot where they had a conversation with her. And one of the things that the chatbot quickly started to do was to be very nice and sweet when the students were critical towards the Nazi regime, and they said, well, you know, people can make mistakes, and you know, it's maybe they didn't have the intention, and they sort of tried to soften up in a way that it actually became disingenuous to them having a history lesson. And given that you have a background in history, which is often based on facts, but also secondary resources, which may now be created by AI or maybe even recreated. And you also work with languages, where it's important to have a thorough understanding of syntax and culture in order to communicate well. I wonder if some of this go through your mind when you think of AI as a useful tool for students. Are there aspects around that concern you, and what does that look like for you? What are some of the thoughts that go through your mind?
I mean, regarding to that example you gave, but also my own thoughts about it was that it's so much more difficult for the students now, and it will be more to know about the sources, if it's right or wrong, to know if this is fake or not fake. So with photographs or mismatching that and creating photos, even connected to a historical event, I think that is very, very difficult. Maybe there are things you can look at and you can teach them, or we can look together and compare it. But a check of facts, I think it's really, really difficult because they believe in the source and they're not checking, maybe like us, knowing from before we have to check different sources and we have to check where it comes from. That is nothing they grown up with. It's so much information and so fast information, so they don't take the time to check that. And I think that is a danger. That is something we really need to make them aware of. They can say maybe, yeah, we know, but they don't do it because they want to save the time as well, or they think, okay, I take it for given. So I think that is, especially with history, something I'm concerned about, I would say. And the good thing of it is that books getting old, but the internet is always alert with new information. But yeah, the risk for not checking the facts and even having wrong facts, that's a really concern, I think, and not being able to know about it. Yeah. And also in languages, to not being sensitive about what language can do, that you take, for example, irony or sarcasm or jokes for given, so that the students, is my impression that they're not sensitive enough about the language and what you can interpret of it, or how you when you say things, sometimes the intention is another one that the reader or the person who listens to it gets. So I think sensibility for language and using words, choosing words is something we have lost a little bit, and we need to work with, and especially when it comes from an AI. So they're no feelings. It's a machine reacting on what prompts or what question we asked. So, yeah.
So it's almost like a ripple effect that. Yeah.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
BBC News reports on changes to apprenticeships. Businesses employing adult apprentices will now, according to the DfE, have the power to decide whether a maths and English qualification should be part of the prescribed course. This could mean 10,000 more apprentices are able to complete courses every year. According to the news site, more than 90,000 people over the age of 19 began apprenticeships between August and October 2024. However, more than 45% of apprentices drop out of schemes without completing the course. This is according to recent official DfE figures. The government said it hoped that relaxing the rules for apprentices over the age of 19 will ensure more students are both applying for and completing apprenticeships, in sectors particularly where there continues to be high demand, such as healthcare, social care and construction. Apprentices aged 16 to 18 will still have to complete an English and Maths functional skills qualification, equivalent to a GCSE, as a course requirement. The government has also confirmed plans to reduce the minimum duration of an apprenticeship from 12 months to 8 months from August 2025. The move has also been welcomed by many businesses, who say it will help employers fill skills gaps more quickly. Whilst failing to secure a qualification in maths or English is one of the key reasons apprentices do not complete courses, an education think tank is also quoted in the article as saying poor quality schemes are also a factor. The chief executive of Lifetime, England's largest apprenticeship provider, welcomed the changes, but also said he was disappointed the change was not fully extended to apprentices aged 16 to 18. Full details and comments from those following the current apprenticeship courses can be found on the BBC News website. Schools Week carries an opinion piece on workload and changes to Ofsted. focusing in particular on the impact changes and developments can have on staff who work in and leaders of small schools. The piece by the head teacher of a primary school highlights the fact that Department for Education and Ofsted have the same expectations of a school, regardless of its size. The article focuses on the outcome of a Freedom of Information request submitted to Department for Education about the statutory roles a school is required to have a named person for, and a list of the roles it is good practice to have a named person for. The response from the Department for Education, as quoted in the piece, was, "The department holds the information you requested, but it is being withheld because the department is not required to provide information in response to a request if it is already reasonably accessible to you." However, the piece goes on to say that having accessed all of the documentation on the Statutory Guidance for Schools website and running them through an AI program to see how long it would take a human to read them, the outcome was concerning: between 29 and 40 days of uninterrupted work. The article closes with a concern that the information itself is actually not reasonably accessible, and that perhaps finding staff to complete the statutory roles is similarly challenging. In Wales Online, a story about Saturday detentions is featured. Those of a certain age will remember the film The Breakfast Club, which focused on an unlikely mix of students forced to spend a Saturday together after behaviour incidents in school. In Wales, however, a school led by a man dubbed Wales's strictest headmaster, where staff had previously been on strike over physical and verbal abuse from pupils, has just introduced the weekend detentions. The head teacher has said the decision was made because other forms of discipline had not been effective. According to the article, the school has also introduced other creative ways of disciplining pupils, including on some occasions asking their parents to attend class and sit next to them. Poorly behaved pupils have also been asked to carry out supervised litter picking. It's not the first time the school has made media headlines. In the past, it has also featured in the news for enforcing strict uniform policies. Further details can be found on Wales Online. Finally, the Nigerian Guardian reports that a Lagos-based educational institution has unveiled a campus in the UK. The campus will provide English language upskilling courses, leadership training, summer camps for students aged between 10 and 17, and a pre-master's programme for graduates seeking academic refinement before enrolling in UK universities. Speaking at the official launch of the campus at the residence of British Deputy High Commissioner, representatives of the school praised the school's expansion, saying it served as a bridge connecting cultures, ideas and aspirations, and that it symbolised a shared vision for an education system that transcends borders. The British Deputy High Commissioner to Nigeria also highlighted the importance of fostering trade between Nigeria and the UK. Further details can be found online. This has been Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Mariel, do you have the same experience in individuals and societies in social studies? That do you see that same dynamic that Christina is talking about with your students there?
Yes, I think one of the ways that we have addressed it, and it's fortunately part of my curriculum is through source analysis. So that's a skill that we explicitly teach. I think Christina is absolutely right. I think students are challenged by source analysis, by trying to understand what's factual, what's not factual, misinformation, disinformation. I mean, and there's so much all the time, and not just from AI. So I think it's a really important skill to be teaching and helping them understand. Also, AI is still very new, so it makes mistakes. They call them hallucinations, and I think that's a pretty accurate term at times when it's happened to me. I think it's really important to have these conversations, to be explicitly teaching that skill. Let's look at the information that we have, whether it's from AI or any other source. How do I identify that it's reliable? There are some guidelines available about how to assess AI output, things to look for, always watching out for bias. It has intrinsic bias. So I think that for us, the focus, as it's already part of individuals and societies, has really increased on, let's look at this source and figure out if it's reliable, who wrote it, what's the perspective, what's the bias. So having that skill as part of our curriculum already has facilitated transferring that to AI as another source of information that needs to be evaluated.
Incredibly complex, and I think not just learning the technical skills, but also learning the methodologies of how to navigate that space in teaching going forward as what the students are experiencing begins to change in the real world. Just want to jump for a minute and thank all of our listeners from around the world. I see more and more are joining, and I also want to thank our sponsors. The show tonight is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational. John Catt is a publisher of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. And also a big thank you to USA Study. Your students could study in the USA. USA Study is your one-stop platform for guiding students through their college application journey. So visit usastudy.co.uk. All right, ladies, I have another question for you. Thank you so much for the conversation so far. I very much can imagine what it is like for you in that classroom space and the enormous amount of challenges that are coming in because of these different technologies. And I think that many teachers really feel that AI is moving too fast, that among all of the other priorities that teachers have to attend to, they just don't have the time to keep up, or they lack the necessary training. So, Christina, I'll start with you. What are some of the biggest barriers that you see for teachers adopting AI? What are your biggest challenges out there in the classroom and in the school?
I think finding the time, of course, because there's so much administrative work and that is growing everywhere. And then also find the time to not just learning about the tools or the opportunities it would give, but also we always want to be a step ahead the student, not behind, and we want to know before them normally, and changing that feeling that, okay, we could learn together. It's not always necessary to know more and everything before them. So I think that is changing of thinking we would need. But of course, the time, the motivation, and the will to learn, that's the curiosity is the first thing, I would say. But what I can hear, and I can think sometimes myself, okay, that now there's another thing we have to learn, and now we have to jump on it. So learning what I can do with it, then learning the technical side, or the changing my methods, leaving my comfort zone. So those are things I need to agree with myself first. And then I have to, from leadership, for example, making time free for that, and giving time, not just a PD day, but a process when you, in long terms, could say, okay, this is our project now, nothing else. And everyone is coming in with step-by-step learning, but then very, very specific, giving examples for how to use it in my subject, for example. And then coming together and also learn from each other. So that is a long-term process. You need a plan for that. And not having that, it will not work. It will just be a one day, a one-time thing. And then everyone is left with themselves with it. So implementation is something really, really needed. And I need to understand how I really can use it for myself, because there are so many different tools and new are coming. So when I learn one, there are 10 others next week. So I think it's always running after, as I said in the beginning, the train is going already. So, and I don't know how to make this time free for the right way to learn, and then also enjoy it. Because you cannot, if you have to learn new things, but then you have never time to implement it or to try it out. So it needs a bigger plan for that, a long-term plan, and a holistic sign of thinking how to change the education. I'm convinced that sitting in a classroom with the rows of tables and chairs, it's not what we can do anymore. But we are doing it everywhere, and we have 50-minute lessons or 100-minute lessons. So that's not how it works anymore. But we do it all over the world.
Yeah, I think that's such a profound message. I know, Christina, you and I have actually had conversations about this before, that the actual logistics of the classroom, it sort of institutionalized a certain way of working, how the tables and chairs are set up in the classrooms, whether it's circles or groups or rows, really determines to a great extent how the lessons turn out. And I agree with you. There's no question that there is a significant shift, and just like we want our students to love to learn, and we don't want to just tell them things, we also want them to be able to apply those things. Teachers are no different, as you point out, that teachers really need the time, not just to be told that these tools exist, but a time to sit with their peers in the subject groups, in their teams, try different things, figure out new methodologies. So time is valuable in education. It's one of those things that teachers never have, but in this case, maybe perhaps one of those things that need to be prioritized. I wonder, Mariel, if you can talk to us a little bit about that as well, because I know that you had an early mindset shift, and then that allowed you to feel more confident about going into the classroom and experimenting with using AI. Could you give us a little bit of a picture of what happened there? What kind of support did you receive? What kind of mindset shift did you need to take? And was there a feedback loop for you where you had time to sit with your peers and work out whether you were using best practice?
Absolutely. I 100% support and agree with Christina's thoughts on having whole school approach, and that leadership needs to be involved. I was an early adopter, so at the very beginning there were just a few of us sort of playing around with ChatGPT and those types of tools. But once we made the commitment as a school to be part of the pilot, our Google pilot, that was when the biggest shift started, because leadership was on board, and we started having more conversations around updating our academic integrity policy, requiring referencing for AI. What does it look like? How do you do it? Some of that was led by the IB. They were also sort of early adapters in terms of providing guidelines for teachers around acceptance of AI and how that would work. But we've just had an ongoing process of feedback loop. I just did a session yesterday with my colleagues, showing them some different good practice and tools that they could use to reflect what Christina said, they are new tools that came out in December. So of course, always changing and finding the time to keep up is hard, but we do take those moments. We take a staff meeting every once in a while just to share some good practice. I try to be available as an early adapter to all of my colleagues. So I've finished that session by saying, if you want to learn more, if there's something you're curious about, please come and speak to me. So I think what's facilitated my own mindset change, as I said, was my interaction with my students. But I think what's facilitated a more whole school approach is the opportunity, again, to have these conversations, to discuss it openly. And I had one of my colleagues say to me, you were showing all these great tools. I'm still at refine my speech. I don't want to do this. I'm concerned about it. I'm not ready, but I need to start somewhere. Can we just sit down and start somewhere? And she said to me, just like Christina has said, I need to sort out some of my own thoughts first, but then when I'm ready, would you be available to sort of help me get started from something that's attainable? And I think, like I said, mine really started from a very similar need to Christina's, which is time. I mean, she's hit it dead on. The administrative work that teachers are dealing with, it's just going up and up and up. I spend so much of my time writing documents. And I found that AI really gives me a lot of that time back because I can use it in so many different ways to save time. I think part of my mindset change is also that if I am not doing tons of differentiation because I can do it with my AI tools, or, again, I've provided everyone has done their own keyword list. I really also have more time to connect with my students in the classroom to help them understand the nuances, to help them understand source analysis, to have those conversations, to work with them side by side, to do more project-based learning, to do more applications. So I think once I sort of got past that initial hesitancy of what does this tool do? Why is it useful to me? I realized that it was going to be a great opportunity for me to maybe sort of get back to what I love about teaching because I could save time on some of the administrative tasks. So I think that also really helped switch my mindset because, teachers teach to be in a classroom with kids who are learning. That's what we signed up for. And so I think AI's kind of given me some of that back in a lot of ways.
And I think that is such an important point that probably resonate with a lot of our listeners from around the world, because the administrative work, the weight of that, and the dissonance in the work-life balance because of that is one of the reasons that many teachers ultimately decide to leave the practice and find other positions. I wonder, before I have another question for Christina, but before I hop into that question, I wondered if you could give us an example of a way that you have used AI to cut down on some of your administrative work. One example of something that has worked really well for you and given you more time back to spend time with students in the classroom, or maybe just simply take Saturday off instead of
Yeah. I think there are lots. There are little things from email writing. It can do it for you. I work with a lot of teachers who are not native English speakers. It's my first language and it's the language we use at school, but it's not the majority of my colleagues' first language. So sending an email to parents, you can create a template, send it out really fast. Report writing, again, it can give you a structure. It can give you some key phrases to use. It can be used for feedback. I would use caution with that. It's needs work still. But I know I have colleagues that it really helps them writing up feedback comments. I've tried it myself. It does give some really good key points. You can usually get at least sort of a basic outline of what the student has done well and what they need to work on. So that's a big time saver. I think applying universal design for learning and differentiation strategies, it's amazing. It gives tons of tips and tools. And, with Gemini, you can export it directly to docs. Or I can do it directly in docs with Gemini sidebar. So, having AI integrated into my Google tools, I can generate a lesson plan directly from Google Classroom and then post it. There's just so much. I can re-level a text. So if I'm differentiating for one of my students who maybe is also new to English language, I can re-level a text. I can simplify it. I can translate things for students that need it. There's so much that can be done. I also, if you're having to do data-based work as a teacher, I do not know how to use a spreadsheet, but thankfully I can tell Gemini to do it for me, and it does it in a sheet, and I don't have to structure the table, which would take me 10 days. So there's just so many different things at this point that I use it for to save time on the administrative side. It's really made my life a lot easier in many ways around that.
Incredible, and incredible to hear all the ways that you're using technology to make that workflow. I wonder, Christina, when you're hearing that, all of these Gemini and Google and worksheets, and what's going through your mind when you hear Mariel talk about how she's now using technology to change her workflow?
My first thought is, okay, I actually have started to use it as well, right? So because I use it for my preparation, for my lesson preparation. And it's not that there are ideas I not have myself, but they are coming very quickly. So I can just take and choose. So have a look at it and then I can modify them. So I really enjoy that. Very proud of that, that I started actually. Then the second thought is when you say that it saves a lot of time for example, framing comments or report card writing or giving feedback. So then my question is it really faster, or I think I would have problems to frame it in a good way, what I want from it. So to really help me. So, I mean, that needs training, right? So to ask the right question or give the right comment prompts or whatever. So for me, it seems still seems that it would take longer for me than just writing it myself. But I also save time for translation or just checking, shutting down text, simplify text. So I started to use it, and I can see the opportunities in it, and I'm just looking forward to use use it in the same way and be able to say that saves time for me, because right now it doesn't in that way, or not that much. So so I can understand what you say, but I cannot really see how it works, and it really would save time for me. Yeah.
I think Mariel, if I could just, I wonder if you could dig into that just a little bit more, because I'm also myself very curious to hear, like, how would that play out, and how would someone like Christina get to that same space and use this in a way to save time?
Yes, I think, well, first of all, I see my own journey reflected in Christina's experience, because that's where I started. And I think when I first started to use AI, even around report comments, I don't use the word commendable. So it just kept giving me these comments that everyone was commendable. And I also was sort of frustrated with it, because I thought, I don't know, no one speaks like that. And I think that Christina has hit a very key point again, that prompt writing is the very first skill to learn when using AI. And it's something that I teach students now, because just like a calculator, it's only as good as the input you can give it, and you have to be able to evaluate its output. So I think prompt writing is where people should really start with their AI journey. There is information and literature available. And I think the one big piece of advice around prompt writing is the more specific you can be, the better you're going to get results. So when I'm asking for a report comment, it's this grade level, this type of student, this type of, I try to give it as much information as I can. And I think there are some things that I won't ever use AI for. For example, for me, I don't use it as much for emails. I do use it sometimes to generate email templates, but email writing is something that it's fast for me to do. It's my own language. It's something that I've been doing for a very long time. I've been in education for 20 years. So writing an email to a parent for me, it's not a challenge. I don't need AI to do that for me. But there are other things that I definitely, like I said, with differentiation, that even though I can do it and I feel confident in doing it, it really is a big time saver. So I think also we don't need to feel the pressure to do everything with AI. We can evaluate what tools work for me. A little bit like when we do accommodations for our students, they can also sort of pick and choose. What is it that works best for me as a learner? We don't have to, sort of bow down to this pressure of using all the AI tools. We can decide for ourselves, this is what's helpful to me. This I don't really need. And again, just be really specific with your prompts, because that will give you the most output. But I think there isn't a lot of training around that either. So, as school systems, if we are interested, maybe that's one of our first requests. We would like training about really how to write a prompt. We want to share our own experience with it. We want to sit down and try it. We want to see what the output is. We want to have the time to think about at least which basic tools are really going to be helpful to us. I think we can advocate for that a little bit as educators.
I think that's incredible advice, especially because the better you can communicate with a large language model, the better result you get. And in fact, language teachers that specialize in communication are actually in a really good position to be the ones that are very good at prompting. But of course, we'll need some guidance in then getting that journey started and understanding how to talk to an AI. Christina, if you could have your wish, the lottery of all shelves, and you could wish for the absolute best professional development and support that would help teachers just like you to be more confident in engaging with AI, what would that professional development and support look like for you?
I think for me, it needs to be very hands-on. It should integrate some introduction, of course, but then not sharing all the possibilities, but choosing some, and then also let the participants trying out things and to talk about it. So I think really hands-on and trying out the tool myself, that would be the best way to do it. And as I said before, in long-term thinking, so that you try it out yourself, but then you go back to the classroom, try it in the classroom or for preparation. Best way both, both parts. And then coming back and talk about it and sharing the best way working for colleagues, for example, and sharing their ideas, and then going back, try it again. So I think a mix of theory, but most hands-on and trying out myself, and then so that would be the best way. But also having all the things around from the school. I mean, you need also the technical devices for it. So I go with my private computer, for example. So or maybe the network is not working in the classroom, or there's not a connection with the projector or things like that. So that's also something making me hesitating to use that in the classroom, even if I do it every day, but there's always something not working. So that also needs to be to be something. But in terms of development, yeah, I would say a good mix of theory, but most very doing it and trying out what would be good for my subject, and then in collaboration with other subjects.
Amazing. And I think it's so interesting that you bring up the actual logistics of technologies. I think we've all been there where you have a big lesson planned and then some of the students are DDoSing the Wi-Fi and suddenly you have no internet connection and all the best plans are gone, or maybe the power goes out or some other thing. And I think that can actually be a bit of a delay in terms of adoption, is being able to trust the technology. Mariel, I saw you nodding your head when you heard that, and we're almost out of time. But I wonder, in that same context, do you have, based on being an early adopter, you've done incredible work with Acer, with Google. What advice would you give to teachers who are curious about AI, but they just don't know where to start, and maybe they have some real concerns? What would be the number one advice that you would pass on to your peers around the world?
I think I have two. One is to play. So I always joke when I'm talking about AI with other teachers that most of what I have learned, I've learned through playing. So play with my AI tools. And so I think that mindset of this is a tool that I can play with and there isn't so much right and wrong around it. I can just experiment with it and see what works for me. So I think I would try to adapt to the play mindset. But also what I would love to see generally is more of this. So more community around AI so that Christina has the opportunity to speak with someone like myself and we can share experiences that I can reassure her and say, I was there, I started in the same place, and this is where I am now. I think dissenting voices in this space are very necessary because we do need to stop and think about consequences and impacts and make ethical choices. And I would maybe remind early adopters like myself to not forget that they started where Christina is now, and to remember that we're all in this together. I mean, I think if we think of any impact on education when we have come together as a strong community, it's become successful. I think then we can also raise our voices to big tech and say, I'd love to do that. I don't have the tools in my classroom. So I think that's what I would say is engage in the community. Ask the questions, say out loud that you're scared about it. See if you can find someone nearby that's happy to help and support. And I would encourage early adopters like myself to make your experience available. Be honest about what works, what doesn't work, what's challenging. So I think if we can just engage in the conversation more, it will be helpful and beneficial to everyone.
I think those are perfect words to end our segment. We are out of time. I could talk to the both of you for hours more, and hopefully we'll find an opportunity to continue these conversations. As you point out, Mariel, incredibly important that educators reach out to each other, lean on each other, and have open conversations about their fears, their worries, their excitement, their learnings, and become learning partners in this journey. A big thank you to both of you. Christina Peters is joining us from Berlin in Germany. Mariel Reid is joining us from Bologna in Italy. And I want to thank our listeners from around the world who are listening in tonight. And we will return in exactly 1 month from now with our next late night with Clara Hawki. And thank you again so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to joining us tonight.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at it.Together. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.